to be joined by Robert, and also known as Robbie. And we are in Chicago on a park bench. There is a lot of noise currently that is not going to hopefully continue. There's just a large group of motorcycles passing by. But anyway, Robbie, welcome to the stream.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Oz.
Really glad to have you here. And this is kind of like a pretty momentous interview / sit down because Robbie's been working on a play for years now, right?
Yeah. I conceived of it probably 5-6 years ago, and then really actively working on it over the last 3, and then pretty much nonstop for the last 2 years. And I'm just about done, so it's finally really happening.
And I've had the pleasure of actually reading about it, and it's pretty remarkable. Before we kind of get into the themes of the play, or of the musical rather, which is basically kind of like an animal liberation. Would you say animal liberation musical?
Yeah, it is. It's a musical about activism, and animal rights activism plays a large role in it. But it's also about environmental activism and human rights activism as well. It's really about the intersectionality of all 3 of those. But animal rights plays a very big part in it. Yes,
that's awesome. So I definitely want to hear more about it. But in the meantime, would you like to tell us just a little bit about kind of like what? By the way, I don't know if you guys are hearing this background noise. There's just kind of like
I think it's
hundreds
starting
and
to die
hundreds.
a little bit now.
Yeah,
That was amazing. There's got to be thousands.
Maybe thousands of motorcycles going by. So hopefully you guys can still hear us okay. But if you want to tell us, Robert, just about kind of like what opened you up to the world of being vegan, like to start.
Sure. Yeah. Like 15 years ago, and I think my story is probably similar to many people. I had a dog, my dog Abby, who the closer I got to her, the more I realized how complex and incredibly intelligent she was. I loved her dearly. And I just, over like the first year that I had her, I just couldn't stop thinking about the fact that, okay, on the other side of the world, in the Philippines and Korea and China, as we all know, dog meat is relatively common. And I just thought a lot about how, my beloved Abby, who is such an amazing creature, who's so intelligent, who's so sensitive, who's so just brilliant and loving, who experiences, so many emotions. She has such a rich, complex emotional life. How if, she had been born on the other side of the world, she could just be stabbed, gutted, sliced up and eaten. And that just seems so insane to me. But then I realized, we do the very same thing here in America. Pigs are just as intelligent as dogs, and chickens, cows, lambs, turkeys, they all have rich emotional lives. And so I just put 2 and 2 together, and then one day I was like, I can't do this anymore, and never looked back, went vegan.
So did you stop eating animals and also stop like using products that come from animals at the same time?
Yeah. So for me, it was a little bit of a transition. So as a matter of fact, I went vegetarian first. I was vegetarian maybe for 4 or 5 months, somewhere along there. And then I did learn about the horrors of the dairy industry. And then I made the switch to veganism. And then in that same time period, I started realizing about further exploitation of animals with testing, vivisection, animal laboratory testing. And so then, at that point, it all just kind of came into focus for me. And at that point, I was all the way.
It's almost vegan. Like the more you learn, like the more horrified you become.
Yeah, truly.
And the more you're like, okay, it's almost like you see a pattern. You're like, wow, I'm really not cool with that. I'm really not cool with that. I guess what does that make me? You're like, I guess I'm against exploiting animals. And then every other instance, you just like, it's easy to do a litmus test. Like, does it exploit? Does it not?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so many activists, and I know you would experience this, and countless others have it. It kind of gets worse. The more you learn how utterly exploited and how a living hell it is for animals on this planet, what humans do to them, it becomes pretty overwhelming at times. But you have to overcome that if you're going to make a difference. You just have to say, you have to kind of put on your big boy or girl pants and say, this is horrific and I have to do something about it. But yeah, I mean, look, activists, compassion fatigue is a real thing, and we all go through it. I know there are times I just feel overwhelmed, like, what kind of an impact can I make? But if we stop trying, then it will continue on for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like makes me think of this quote. I think it was like a Donald Rumsfeld quote or something, but he said something like, unlikely source, but
Yeah.
he said something like, there are like known unknowns and unknown unknowns, and it's the unknown unknowns that you need to watch out for.
Well said.
Yeah. And I feel that way sometimes when I'm like, oh, there are probably ways that animals are being exploited that I don't even know about.
Yeah, and that's why there is something to be said about, there are those groups of vegans that say, look, do the best you can and keep doing the best you can, but if you slip up here or there, okay, move on.
Keep going. Yeah.
And there are times, and definitely when I first went vegan, where I was just so militant about it, and of course I still am. I mean, I am a true blue vegan 100%. But you're right, there are probably ways in which sometimes, some ways, we unwittingly contribute to the suffering. But you can't let that hold you back. You just got to keep moving forward and educating yourself the best that you possibly can. So if that does happen, it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I think something that people get tripped up on a lot is like, if I go vegan, like, what does that mean about XYZ part of my life? And like, how am I going to see myself now? Or how am I going to deal with the pressures of this? And I'm just like, take it step by step. Each move, each action that you take, just try to take more animal-friendly actions.
And they make differences. It's like you almost have to think about it quantitatively, right? Like, okay, well, if I'm 85% vegan, which of course we want 100% veganism, but if you start out as 85% vegan, that's still, when you quantitatively figure it out, you're still saving multitudes of animals every year.
You mean like a plant-based 85%?
Yes, sorry, yeah, that's right. But to expound upon that and extrapolate, even within the realm of things outside of diet, even if you slip up here, there, and you end up using a product that you didn't realize, had some animal exploitation involved with it, that's frustrating. But still, all the times that you did make the proper choice, that has to be taken into account. In other words, we just need to not be too hard on ourselves and appreciate the actual difference we really are making, because it really is great, especially when you think of it collectively, when millions of people are really striving to lead a cruelty-free life.
Yeah, when I talked with Gary Yourofsky, he actually said, I had posed a question to him about whether, and this, I wasn't posing this question to him out of, a sense of necessarily wanting to even know the answer myself, but more so because I've kind of run into issues in the past where I've told people, like, I don't know what number of semi-steps I would be okay with, like, in comparison to a certain number of people going vegan. In other words, to clarify, like, let's say one person goes vegan versus 10 people like drastically reduce their animal consumption. And he was saying, well, like, there would have to be a threshold where after which, I would kind of say, as long as, this number of people actually reduce their animal consumption by however much, that would be a worthwhile trade-off than some people completely.
And then what's even better is if you get people that straight up go flat out vegan, and then you get those, like you're describing, that go whatever, 60, 70, 80%, because again, the cumulative effect is massive, and for the animal that saves, they don't care if they're saved because of a person that's 60% vegan or plant-based or 100%. All they know is that they're alive and that they're saved.
Yeah. Something else that's interesting too, I think, is, we do stress a lot that it's not a diet, that it's like an ethical choice and a social justice movement, and, a commitment to putting a certain viewpoint into action. It is, I think, the case that, like, people who generally stop, even like vegetarians who stop eating animals, generally will tend to not, and I'm not basing this off like any fact, so maybe it's not exactly a truth claim, but like, I would think that vegetarians probably on the whole don't buy as much leather, quote unquote, don't attend rodeos or zoos probably as much, or go to circuses that use animals. Like, I think if you stop the eating of the animals, somehow I think that there is like an impact on your consciousness.
Absolutely, dude. I couldn't agree more with that. And the fact of the matter is, and this kind of gets into the artistic element of this story, but we all we are all on our own journey. We are all writing our own stories. And most of the time, those transitions don't happen overnight. Like I said earlier, mine wasn't exactly just all of a sudden one night I just switched all off. There was a bit of a transition there. And so, there really is something to be said about making your story, continually trying to make yourself better every day, trying to lead a life that impacts the planet in a negative way, making that less and less every day, and of course, impacting animals in a negative way, less and less every day. So to strive, and we're never going to be perfect, but you can strive to make it better every day. Cumulatively, again, the result is massive. And not only, and another thing that comes into play too is when it comes to the companies that sell these products or that test on animals, that exploit animals, when that cumulative effect comes into play and they're really starting to see that the people that are purchasing their products, this means a lot to them and they're holding back from buying products because it involves animal testing or animal products, then they listen. And then that's when huge change starts to take place. And interestingly, that element comes into the musical quite a bit. This whole idea.
It's almost like sending a signal, through either purchasing power or through direct contact, demands for transparency. Absolutely. Or demands for change. And I think we've seen different campaigns actually succeed quite a bit when they're focused more so, I would say, on single issues like fur bans, that kind of thing. I think
circus, absolutely.
I do have to say, the word journey is a little bit of a buzzword on YouTube, like with the ex-vegan so-called community, where people will use that word a lot and say I'm on a journey though, and stuff like that.
No, that's not the journey I'm talking about. I'm talking about the journey to self-actualization and being the most compassionate, most animal-friendly, and not just animal-friendly, but to be a proponent for the voiceless, to be a proponent and an advocator for those that are discriminated against and that are on the margins of society. And that's where, again, the musical, The Beautiful Resistance, it gets into that. It's not just with animals, but it's with all marginalized, groups within our sphere, right? It's like our journey is to help those of us that have a voice need to utilize that voice for those that don't have a voice. And that's the journey I'm talking about. Yeah.
And so you dropped the name of it. So it's called The Beautiful Resistance. And I've had the chance to actually read the synopsis of it. Yeah. And it's a remarkable story, and it's really amazing to me, I guess, how without giving it all away, I guess, there's I'm sure you want to talk about certain things more specifically, but there's a kind of synthesis between storytelling, like fictional storytelling, and real world events, like things that are grounded in history. I think we see this sometimes in different authors will bring in kind of the historical and the literary, and I think that's a really powerful element. It really makes it something that I can see serving as kind of almost like a keystone moment kind of a thing in terms of the vegan literary and artistic and theatrical spheres. So I'm really excited. I think that maybe you don't even realize how big of a thing that this can really be. I'm sure you have hopes for it, but maybe it could be it could.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I mean that sincerely. When you read the synopsis and you got back to me, I was so pleasantly surprised, and I was really humbled. You said some really, really kind things, and it really melted my heart. But then also, it validated what I'm really trying to do, which is, we all have every one of us, we have our skill set that that we're really good at. It's no coincidence that you're doing what you're doing. You're just an incredibly good communicator, and I've told you this before many times. You're a great communicator. You're very technologically savvy. You've got great motivation. So it doesn't shock me at all that you have, developed this channel that's promoting veganism and promoting animal rights. And so for me, my skill set is music and art. and I'm a bit of a writer as well. And so, I just wanted to effectively create something that I'm passionate about, and I'm not passionate about anything more than I am about animal rights and human rights and environmental stewardship. That is, if you had to cut up Robbie Wayner, that's what would come out. That's what I care about the most. And my skill set is music and writing and art. So I had to bring it all together, and hopefully you're right. Hopefully it will do really well, because truly the aim of this is to make people think. There's many, you've got the plot of the story, but then there's themes and sub themes, and one of the major themes, as you know, is the intersectionality of human rights, environmental, stewardship, and
Justice,
animal rights. Yeah, justice. If you're against exploitation for marginalized groups of humans, you really need to stop and consider the exploitation of animals, and vice versa, because we know some vegans that, not a lot, but there's some vegans out there that are so consumed with animal rights that they kind of forget about the marginalized segments of society that are voiceless. Like, like one of the main characters, as you know, is Yasmina in this musical and in this story. She's a member of the activist group, and she's confined to a wheelchair, and her story is just as important in this musical as is Leo's, the main proponent. So I really thank you for what you've just said, and yeah, hopefully the aim of this musical, this story, will be to inspire everyone that sees it, to come in contact with it, to think about justice. Like you said, it's really just about justice for all living creatures, whether it be animal or human. So yeah, thank you for that.
I really love how the documentary, and thanks for your kind words too about me. It's I don't do the best with flattery, but I do appreciate it. And with regard to the musical, there's this theme that I kind of perceived as I was reading the synopsis of just like truth to power, and kind of like the immutable aspect of advocacy, I guess, for those who, like you're saying, kind of can't speak up for themselves or are kind of like marginalized or like almost like systematically disadvantaged.
Yeah.
So I think that the title, "The Beautiful Resistance," really kind of like encompasses that almost like sacred flame that permeates all justice movements.
Sacred flame. And the beautiful resistance also is kind of a tip of the cap, kind of an homage to
I don't know how it's pronounced.
So that's why, homage or homage. But at any rate, it's really a tip of the cap to all of those activists that have come before us as well. I don't know. I do not know. Because Chicago, and as you know, the musical, the story is based in Chicago, and Chicago has a very, very rich history.
Sorry.
That was a great moment. The camera didn't capture that.
Yeah, someone walked by with like a tub of like
who knows
what, like some white animal slime.
It did not look good at all. At any rate, so yeah, the musical, the story, it has a lot of. It's based in Chicago, and and that's another thing. This activist group that the musical is about, they're called the EEA, the Equal Earth Alliance. And it's a group that is intergenerational. It has Regan. She's in her 70s. She's the founder of the group. She's been an activist since the 60s. Promoting standing up for feminism, for female rights, for immigrants' rights. Then you have Yasmina, who's in her early 20s. Yasmina is Mexican American. She's confined to a wheelchair. Then you have Leo, who of course is the main character. He's he's an African American here in Chicago, but his best friend Yang is an openly gay Chinese American who grew up in Chinatown. And then of course you have Aurora, Leo's love interest, who is transgender. So the group really is It's very diverse, to say the least. But that's a cross section of our society that we live in, and of course, us being from Chicago, these are people we know, and our experiences in activism involves all these types of people, and that's what makes life worth living, is the uniqueness of all of us. So I felt that was very important to make sure that within the plot and within the story, within the group of characters, it was really a cross section of activism and society at large.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the kind of like character list, like a brief overview of that, because I think that the cast is masterfully crafted, and I think as people will hopefully see when they are able to watch this musical, is that the different voices of the characters really shine through in their behaviors, and not at all in like a stereotypical way, and more like a you can kind of like see the pain points of the different characters. You kind of see where different events intersect, that kind of almost like brush up against those at the edges of vulnerabilities that each
Absolutely,
of them have.
yeah. And without giving away too much, but as you know, yeah, there's a lot of vulnerability in this story, and you're right. The story is just as much about personal transformation and dealing with you know trauma, PTSD. It's dealing with self-identification and the transformation that we go through as we grow older. And it's also just a lot about it's about loyalty and forgiveness too. I mean, I bite off a lot in this musical. I hope that I have achieved the main salient themes, but then also, as you had mentioned to me in one of our other conversations, there's sub themes that are in there that hopefully come across as well. And I've received pretty good feedback thus far, which makes me happy. I mean, truthfully, one of the best moments I had in feedback, as far as that goes thus far, is that a friend of mine who's not an activist, who's not a vegan, and who actually leans kind of right politically, she said that she absolutely loved it because there's elements of this story that she's experienced with her groups of friends when it came to the loyalties, when when certain friends get into arguments with one another and you're forced to take a side, and then that really threatens to split up a really strong family group. She can relate to it, even though, yeah, she's not a vegan, again, not an activist. And so hopefully there's a little bit of something for everyone in there, but ultimately, hopefully it makes people think, really challenge them to think about how we lead our lives in comfort, and whether there's a price for that comfort, and if that price is by, marginalizing and suffering towards animals and other marginalized groups. We need to consider that, and hopefully that comes through.
Yeah, I think you expanded on that in the plot beautifully, and I think there's also this idea, or not the plot, I guess, but themes, and this theme of like risk taking. I find also finds itself coming through in the musical with the price of speaking up for others.
Yeah.
The price of putting your neck out on the line for others, and that concept of trust as well. When it comes to listening to others, as far as like what you ought to do or ought not to do.
When you're in a group of activists, trust becomes a really big deal, and we've lived it. And in the musical, it comes out. I mean, Leo, the main character, he gets thrown in jail for his activism. And yeah, there are consequences. There are consequences sometimes, and it all depends on the role you're going to play in the activism. Some people play it a little bit more safely, and we've known these people, and we've been these people. Sometimes you're a little bit more aggressive. Sometimes you're a little bit more placid and laid back. But there is truly a role for everyone in activism and in making the world a better place. There really is. And like, Regan, at one point, Regan, the 70-year-old, at one point she says, yeah, I've been thrown in jail 2 or 3 times in the past for my activism, but now I'm much more effective out of jail than I am in jail. Whereas Leo, in his late 20s, he's more than willing to go to jail for standing up. And there really is a place for everyone under the umbrella of activism. There really is, truly.
Yeah, and I really want what Robert said to sink in with you guys also. Anyone watching who is doing activism in their in their own lives. We all have a role to play in the movement for liberating our fellow animals. I see a comment from UK Freedom Fighter, which says, "I love it already, although I've not yet watched it." It's awesome.
Hopefully you really like it once you watch it.
I can't imagine anything otherwise. Would you like to tell us kind of about, or if you want to keep it more under wraps, I totally understand too, but like kind of the expanding on kind of what I was bringing up earlier about historical or like real life context versus these
absolutely,
characters.
Yeah. So again, kind of coming back to the Chicago angle, and one of the persons that I've gotten feedback on the script is like, yeah, this is kind of a love letter to Chicago in some ways. I didn't really write it thinking of that, but because it's the context in which I have led my activist life over the last 25 years, 30 years, you too, we can kind of relate to what's gone down activism-wise here in Chicago. And so, when you even go all the way back to the 1880s with the Haymarket riots, that was the beginning of the labor movement in the United States and in many ways throughout the world. So I really do try to touch upon, and then of course Regan's character, she's very much, a proponent of standing up for female reproductive rights. And of course Yasmina is very concerned about, people with disabilities. And where it gets really personal is that, you and I, we've had experiences in different activist groups in Chicago where at times differences have cropped up which have caused rifts. And sometimes the groups have been able to work through them and get over them and stay together and actually be stronger. And then other times, as we know, everything's fallen apart and it's been really disastrous. So we've experienced it on a very personal level, but then there's multitudes. History is replete with other groups and activist groups where the same things have happened. Whether it be GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, or other groups. You go through these moments where conflict arises, and it's amazing how sometimes you can work through them, and then other times it just doesn't happen. So, yeah, within the story, a couple things come up where there is a real split. A fissure begins to happen with the group, and a part of the plot is about how they work through it. And it actually involves around the relationships with a couple of the characters. Leo and Aurora are a couple, and I'll go ahead and give away a little bit of it.
Get a little snippet.
Leo and Aurora are a couple, and they fall madly in love. And then, as happens in life, one of them changes their mind over time and falls out of love, and then falls in love with someone else from the group. And loyalties are tested. And we've seen that happen, and it's amazing how such an incredibly personal issue like that can really impact a large group of people that are together collectively for one mission. So yeah, that's a little snippet of some of the story.
Yeah, I think the message that you send have also riffs off what Martin Kevin was saying there. United we stand. There's always things that can happen that kind of like can cause some rifts in fighting, things like that. But I think maintaining our cohesion just for the greater good as much as possible is a strategy that we strive for,
and it's raw, and that's a part of the personal transformation. The older we get, at least the older I get, the more I recognize how conflict resolution and forgiveness are so important to leading a happy life, as well as creating a strong social community dynamic. It literally works on the independent personal level as well as the collective level of a group, and it's necessary. And by the way, we haven't even talked about the music yet, too.
Oh man,
there's some rockers in this.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of actually listening to a few of the songs, and I don't even know what to say.
That's some of the funnest parts of the music.
Yeah, it's really it's really like I'm excited for everyone to actually get to watch this, and I want to ask you more about how they can actually watch it in just a bit. But yeah, the music itself, the production quality, and the musical caliber of it is just like very varied and dynamic, to the point where you're kind of taken for a ride. Like in one song, it's kind of like hopeful and jubilant, and then kind of like from there, it's like there's songs that are kind of more a little bit like with more of an edge a little bit, and it's just on the whole, the amount of effort that Robbie's put into this, and the quality of the story, and the depth and the character development, and the extent to which he's like thought out these different themes and kind of like made the puzzle not even like fit together too neatly, which also like, I don't really like a story where the puzzle just fits. It's messy in like the best possible way.
It's very messy. Yeah, you're right. It's very messy. Make no mistake, and you know this. It's a modern rock musical. There's elements of hip hop. There's definitely hip hop in there. Leo is an accomplished rapper. There's definitely some rockers, some kind of post-punk rockers in there. But there's also, there's some jazzy numbers in there.
Yeah. Yep.
My mom was a really great boogie woogie piano player, and I attempt to recreate that with some of the songs, particularly with Regan, who is in her 70s, and she would have known that music as a child a little bit, and so particularly with her songs, I try to incorporate that jazz piano style.
So you played the piano and the guitar and the bass guitar.
So yeah, in these initial demos, I've done all of the instrumentation myself. I've done a little bit of the singing, but I definitely have used other singers. But as far as these initial demos go, I've done all the recording. I'm a multi-instrumentalist, so it just saves me a lot of money to do it myself. When the official soundtrack comes out, I'm definitely going to hire a much better piano player than what I am, without a doubt. But I'll probably bass player too, but I'll probably do the guitar myself and probably some of the keyboards. But yeah, musically, it's really fun. I'm really happy with it, and I'm pretty critical of myself, but I'm pretty happy with the music. I mean, there's a little bit for everyone, but it's truly modern rock. And with elements of rap, and dance. There's definitely some dance in there, but it's this isn't like Mary Poppins or Sound of Music.
No, yeah, I told him
more like Rent.
One of the last songs I listened to, I was like, this is like a mixture of like kind of like Queen and Linkin Park.
Yeah, that's right. You said that. And I took that as a great compliment. So it's but it's very modern, and this is again, it's not that it's not for kids, but it's very much an adult. Again, it's like if you've seen Rent or Spring Awakening or some of these Hades Town, some of these more very modern, current modern musicals. This is what The Beautiful Resistance is more like those. Yeah.
Let's see some of the comments. So Carrie says, imagine making veganism nostalgic for an entire generation.
Well said.
That's a great great image.
Hopefully that's really good. That's very poetic, and hopefully that will be the case one day.
There's a question from Alicia that says, has anyone heard those plants music devices that translate the plant energy into sound? I've heard of something like that actually,
but I don't know anything about it specifically.
I've heard of that with mushrooms, like some mushroom based music.
I wonder how much they can hear what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a. Should I try to film that from here? Let me flip the camera real quick. There's a protest actually in the spirit of resistance. It's a pro-Palestine protest. They said, "Hey Israel, what do you say? How many kids have you killed today?" You guys can probably hear that.
There's a lot of action going on where we're at, between the boats, the motorcycles. We're in downtown Chicago.
Yes.
At this moment.
Yeah. So Robert, I'm wondering if you can tell us about your plans for releasing this in terms of like, do you hope for there to be like a digital version of it, like a almost like a I don't know if plays or musicals really do this, but I think that when I think about like the reach, like UK Freedom Fighter, for example, commented, and I imagine that UK Freedom Fighters in the UK and might have a hard time getting down to Chicago or New York or wherever happens to be. So, do you have kind of like a consumable version in mind for people like across across the pond, etc.?
And by the way, Aurora, one of the main characters, truly, she's from the UK. She's actually a London transplant that is living in Chicago. So there is a connection with the UK and the beautiful resistance. So right now I'm working with a production company in getting this done, but it's still very much in the beginning stages. At this point, it's going to happen through them, but it may not. It may end up being through someone else. I don't know. Hopefully it will. But I am also toying with the idea of actually making this free to the public domain, because I just want the message to get out. I mean, that's the most important thing. And if it's in the public domain, as you know, then anybody can put this on. Any school, any institution, they can produce this musical.
That's incredible.
And so I'm definitely looking into that as well. Right. Oddly, it would be a little bit more complicated to do it that way in the beginning. So right now,
oh really?
Yeah, right now I'm just trying to make this come to fruition, because there's lots of steps along the way with the production side of it to make it happen. So, for instance, this won't be coming out in 2025. Hopefully, it'll be about a year from now in 2026 that it'll premiere here in Chicago. But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I hope it will get to a point where it's digitalized. And I mean, if I can do anything about it, I will most certainly allow it to be redistributed free of charge, on different outlets and that kind of thing. Because the whole idea is to spread the message of this story, and hopefully encourage and to inspire as many people as possible. Yeah.
So if I understand, you do have plans to eventually like record a production.
Yes.
Like
the entire thing. Yes.
Yeah. Like a movie, essentially, just an on-stage movie kind of thing.
Yeah,
amazing.
Exactly right. And this would be a scenario, I guess, kind of like the Grateful Dead, where I would almost encourage bootleg, illegal copies to be posted on the internet, because this is about getting the message out there. And you'll see that on, like, if you go onto YouTube, you'll see famous musicals and plays that get posted because they were, videotaped by someone, and they're somehow able to get it on there, get it online. And I would encourage that. Yeah, with the beautiful resistance, I hope that happens. So
I think not that I think that that's the only way to be selfless. The fact that that's even something on your radar is, I think, like pretty much a testament to your ambitions, motivation, and vision for it. Going into schools and things like that. It's very wholesome.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a main motivation, is because this is something that probably will appeal to younger audiences, but I think it's going to appeal to a wide demographic. And again, it's what the message is about, truly. And in the same way that you and I have been inspired by other bands or other people, other groups, your Gary Yourofsky's, the Smiths or whatever. Hopefully, I want to be able to inspire others to think about these issues. And I mean, and at the end of the day, it's about the animals. It's about awakening America and the world to the unimaginable suffering that animals endure on a daily basis, as well as the suffering and the sadness that marginalized humans experience by being shut off and cast out of society. So I just wanted to inspire as many as possible, truly.
And as far as accessibility goes, like, would you imagine that a recording of it would it carry like a PG, PG-13, R? Like, what kind of rating do you think that it would?
Oh yeah, it would be PG. I mean, there is some swearing, in the dialogue, but it's nothing. So would that be R then if they're swearing?
I think some swearing can push it from PG to PG-13. I don't know if PG allows.
Yeah, so it would be PG-13.
Okay.
Because there is swearing in it, but there's nothing over the top. I mean, there's nothing obscene in this that I think could possibly be considered obscene. So yeah, I would guess PG-13.
Okay.
And as far as the music goes, definitely the music will be online before the musical production actually takes place. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I'll be probably within 2 or 3 months, I'll have a couple teaser songs online. Boy, it is getting very loud. Yeah. I don't know if they can hear it.
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on right now.
Yes.
Sirens, honking.
And Robbie and I were actually talking about doing some outreach after this. Are you still up for it?
Absolutely. Man.
Okay, amazing. So I think we kind of covered a lot for the purposes of talking about your musical. So I think what I'll do is we'll kind of wrap up the stream here, and then I'll go ahead and go live again in a little while, maybe in just like 10, 15 minutes or so.
Thank you to everybody that's been commenting, really. Thank you very much. Yeah. Solidarity.
And I hope that you guys are as excited as I am. It's the vision that Robbie has brought together for this, just pulling from so many different types of consideration for justice is just really, really
thank you.
Remarkable.
Thank you, Freedom Fighter.
So
thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. And if you guys are gonna be able to catch the stream, we'll be live again in probably about like 15 minutes or something.
There is an energy going on down here in downtown Chicago today.
Yes, yeah. So we'll be live again shortly, just on a different stream. So if you're not subscribed to my channel already, go ahead and subscribe. What are you waiting for? And just check your subscriptions, and we'll be live again real soon. And Erwin says he'll be there. Thanks, Erwin. And we'll see you guys all hopefully very, very shortly. All right.
Thanks, Jake.
All right. Bye for now, everybody. Over and out.